Natsume has certainly come a long way since they started making their own Harvest Moon games back in 2014 after their split with Marvelous, who would continue making games under the Story of Seasons title since Natsume owned the Harvest Moon name. From Harvest Moon The Lost Valley right up until Harvest Moon The Winds of Anthos, I've watched Natsume go from less than stellar to competent in its own right, and I had wondered where they would go next from here, so I was interested when they announced Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home. I was even more curious that this game was to be released for Android and iOS, given that their last attempt at a dedicated mobile Harvest Moon game was Harvest Moon Seeds of Memories back in 2016. All I hope was a port. Given how I was somewhat positive that Natsume had taken a step in the right direction, I was a little cautious on how this new game would fare, especially given Winds of Anthos setting a new standard for the Natsume developed games. In Harvest Moon, Home Sweet Home, which I'll shorten to Home Sweet Home going forward, has you play the role of the male or female farmer from Winds of Anthos, whose models have been recycled for this game. The male farmer has the default name of Justin, and the female farmer has the default name of Christina, or you can change the name and basic appearance of the farmer you select. Nonetheless, your farmer is returning to the village of Alba after being away for just over 10 years to start up a new farm. You had gotten in touch with your childhood friend, who is the character you didn't pick at the start of the game who becomes an NPC with their default name, to let them know that you were coming back. While the two of you reminisce about Little Leaf Farm, the farm that you two had made up and run as kids, your friend mentions how the village is in decline and their goal is to revitalise the area and has asked for your help. Not wanting to turn your friend down, you return to Alba to start a new life, run a farm, grow crops, raise animals, befriend the townsfolk, and even settle down and start a family as the two of you work on putting Alba on the map. But is the game any good? Find out in The Good. I really liked the visual appeal of this game. It has a much closer feel to the older Harvest Moon / Story of Seasons games, and certainly has more appeal going for it than Seeds of Memories. While your main characters and the NPC townsfolk have clearly repurposed models from Winds of Anthos, the game's bachelors and bachelorettes are mostly from other games, with 3 being returning characters from Winds of Anthos, 2 returning from One World, and 1 from Skytree Village, and by extension Light of Hope with updated designs, which I think is a nice callback to the series often having recurring characters. The models and environments I felt were quite polished and feel more like an update to what we got with Winds of Anthos. The game's camera angle works very well for the game, and aside from the odd moment when picking fruits off trees, it was never a hindrance to me with transparency coming in if your character moved behind certain solid objects. The visuals are at least one thing that this game has nailed. The gameplay is the standard Harvest Moon affair where you grow crops, look after animals, and make friends of everyone. It's a tried and true gameplay loop that always keeps me coming back for more, and with quality of life changes over the years, it's improved quite a lot. Like with some of the other games, crops can be grown in any season, and the game encourages you to grow crops out of season as this is how mutations are made. Mutated crops often sell for more money, and if crops are looked after by you fertilising them and watering them each day, you can increase their quality to sell them for even more money, or make higher quality dishes out of them. A feature that I liked about Home Sweet Home is that the game encourages you to rotate the fields you grow crops in so that the soil quality can recover. Crops grown in good soil quality I found can increase in quality much faster. Later on you do get the use of a machine which you can load compost into if you need to restore the health of your fields faster. This machine also helps you see which fields are in good condition and which ones need to rest, and you can simply rest the fields by simply not tilling or growing things in them, or loading the machine up with special compost. Not to be confused with the animal waste you clean up, because that is also called compost. Your tools can also be upgraded, and I'm happy to say that the game does not lock tools behind DLC, nor does it have microtransactions, so that's a huge plus going for it. Other activities such as mining and fishing return, and the mechanics are very much like Winds of Anthos. The goal of the game is to revitalise Alba, and you do this by raising happiness. This can be achieved by shipping your crops and produce, talking and making friends with the townsfolk, and completing their requests. At certain milestones you'll be guided on where to go next, and quite often to progress the game's story, you'll need to grow or collect items, with the game being more particular with the quality of the item as you progress. Once you've completed certain tasks, your stamina will increase, allowing you to do more in the day without the need to constantly eat to refill it. The gameplay of Home Sweet Home is very reminiscent of older Harvest Moon games, and I think it definitely captures the spirit of it. I also liked the characters of the game and how they develop. While your childhood friend is still the positive bubbly person you've always known, The same can't be said about the townsfolk when you first meet them. While in other games people are indifferent until you get to know them better, some of the townsfolk in this game are very wary and some even outright hostile to you initially until you gain their trust. Each chapter of the game will focus on key townsfolk, and as you complete the jobs you've been given and Alba starts to get more lively again, these characters will view you in a more positive light and will even open up to you. Harriet, one of the game's bachelorettes, will even dismiss the idea of you talking to her as she doesn't believe you take your job seriously. And as you get to know her, you'll find that she's very passionate about her job and she slowly starts to respect you. You can befriend and marry any of the 7 marriage candidates regardless of gender, and while there are 8 candidates in total, 2 of them are the childhood friend, so you will lose a male candidate if you pick a male main character, and a female candidate as a female main character. I really liked the character development, and it was actually pretty refreshing to have characters in a town wary or hostile to me to begin with. Some of the other townsfolk you can see growing as characters throughout the game. For example, one lady was just wanting to leave the town but ultimately decides to stay and help out and start enjoying life in the town. The same can also be said about Doc Jr., who for once is just relegated to a random NPC in town you can talk to as he comments on how Alba has grown. When I chose Harriet to get married to, there's a touching moment with her father, who, like Harriet, was initially very wary of me at the start of the game, so it was really cool for this game to emphasise the character development. Natsume have certainly stepped up their game with this. However, the game still has some faults, and we're going to discuss those issues in The Bad. I feel this game would have definitely benefited from controller support. While I eventually did get used to holding or tapping the screen to move, with the ability to go to your map and tap a location or townsperson which you can automatically move to being an absolute godsend, where the controls really fail you is in the mines. As you dig through the mines, you may get a warning of rocks falling from overhead, which if they hit you, your stamina goes down. The problem is that more often than not, I try to tap or hold to move away from the falling rocks, just to find the controls don't respond, or else I start digging. As a matter of fact, I found that I was often accidentally digging instead of moving, which also drains stamina, so it was a major annoyance. Another feature that was unusually not present was the ability to discard items. I can't discard items from my backpack or put them on the ground in favour of picking up other items, which has ruined many a trip to the mines. While you can thankfully increase the size of your bag, not being able to discard or at least put down things from your bag was another nuisance. The game's flow of time I felt was too fast. A minute in the game was equivalent to about a second in real time, and this isn't helped by the fact it takes a while to go between your house, the town, and the mine. Looking after your animals is a huge time sink as well, since you have to clean up their waste for compost, feed, brush, and care for your animals in order to get their produce. While you do eventually get access to a feeder which you can interact with in order to fill up the feeding troughs, animals when hungry will often run into one another, preventing some of them from reaching their feed, which forces you to try and move the animals, or leave and re-enter the barn, which also takes up time. Upgraded tools no longer allow you to do things over multiple spots at one time. The game does away with this by replacing it with a feature known as repeated actions, where you can hold and drag over your fields, or if you're in the mines, the ground, and your farm will automatically till, plant, water, fertilise or mine the path that you've drawn. If you've upgraded your tools too early, you can't make the most of your repeated actions, as you unlock the ability to do more as you progress through the story. Repeated actions also take time, and late in the game it wasn't normal for me to already be at midday or early afternoon by the time I've cared for my animals and plants. The time your farmer sleeps at night also affects the time they get up in the morning, and I found staying after 9 PM will make you wake up later the next morning, thus adding another thing to worry about on top of how fast the day goes. I just wasn't a huge fan of it. The game suffered from a few bugs, and it wasn't a great launch for Android users, with the game even failing to load when started. While I appreciate Natsume for getting onto this and fixing it, it took them a few days to fix the issue, and while a workaround had been figured out by users which required you to launch the game through another app, the updated game, while removing the need to do that, also means that your save doesn't carry across, or at least for me it didn't. So if you were very far through the game by the time it was fixed, you're going to lose a lot of progress. The game did have a rare but weird visual glitch in which I had a fishing rod randomly appear on the screen that you couldn't interact with, but this was pretty harmless. During my playthrough, and there is a likely chance this issue may have been fixed or will be fixed in the near future, I found that after a certain point in the game, whenever I get to certain floors in the mine, the touch controls for movements will just stop working. I can't move my character at all. The strange thing is that I can still access my bag and the menus, but there's no way to move my character to progress further in the mines, or even leave, forcing me to quit back to the main menu and reload my last save. This does become a nuisance in late game where you need to reach the lower floors of the mines to get certain materials to complete requests. Of course, while these were problems for me, they won't be an issue once all of them have been addressed and patched. Other than that, I've complained enough, so let's move on to the opinion. Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home is a reasonably solid game and a significant improvement over the likes of Seeds of Memories. Compared to Winds of Anthos, while it's not open world, I'm fine with it being contained in a general area as the game's map is pretty big anyway, and Home Sweet Home I feel is good enough to follow on from Winds of Anthos without being a step back or a step forward. Both games have their appeal and are good in their own ways. The gameplay loop has the Harvest Moon charm to it, and despite being an app, there are no microtransactions or DLC tools, which is definitely a step in the right direction, and should be the case with Natsume's Harvest Moon games going forward. The game's visuals were quite nice, and I really liked the character development. The gameplay though is a double-edged sword, with some mechanics being a nuisance, and the lack of controller support is a bit of a letdown too. I did experience some bugs and issues while playing through the game as I described earlier, and I really hope that they get addressed and fixed, as one of them did require me to exit back to the title screen, in which you may as well say goodbye to anywhere between 5 to 15 minutes of your day, as well as prevent progress later into the game. If you enjoy the Harvest Moon Story of Seasons games, as well as the likes of Stardew Valley or other cozy farming sims, then Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home is a game to consider looking into in order to scratch that itch. So with that, it's time for my rating. I would give Harvest Moon Home Sweet Home a red turnip out of 10. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next Infinite Backlog review. If you enjoyed today's review, feel free to check out some of our other videos and subscribe for more. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram and our Facebook page. Once again, thank you for watching.